Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're looking at a JCM800. This is, I believe, a 2203. Going to be doing a inspection on this guy for someone that's looking to buy this amp. So we're going to open it up. I'm going to walk you through the kind of things I would look for if I were going to be purchasing this amp, and kind of give an estimate of what kind of repair it may need. Okay, so we can see by looking at the back, this is the 100 watt lead 2203. This is the reissue. It's got the built-in effects loop. Got a level switch there and a bypass. The person purchasing this had some concerns about whether or not it was operating at full capacity. So it may be just a power tube, something like that, but it could be totally fine too. We'll dive in a little bit closer here. I'm going to check the fuses to make sure that those are the correct values, and then we'll open it up. All right, so we got the chassis out of the head shell here. This guy's extremely dusty. I don't know if you can even see that on here, but I'm going to give this a wipe down. Looks like it's got the diagonal transformers. All of them appear to be original to the amp. Also looks like ruby filter capacitors. Not seeing anything too concerning. This guy does have a little bit of a bubble on it, but I don't think to the point that it's failing, although it's possible. This is one I'm going to double check what's going on there. And then we're going to pull these tubes also and go ahead and take a look. But I'm going to give this a wipe down before we do anything. Just kind of clean things up a little bit. Okay, just a quick wipe down there. Hopefully you can see a difference from the AB of having it done. Just a quick reminder too that what kills electronics is heat, and dust acts as an insulator. So usually when something gets really dusty, that's going to make it more prone to failure because you're trapping more heat on components that are maybe not rated for that, or have a lifetime that's based on the amount of heat over a certain number of hours for operation. Looks like we have groove tube, ECC 83s, 12AX7s, and then ruby power tubes, EL34Bs. Interesting. Yeah. That's for all these guys. Now it is interesting, we'll take a look at these tubes to see if maybe, I suspect from what the person checking this amp out was describing, that either a power tube has failed and or a screen resistor has failed, if anything is wrong with it at all. But we'll test all these tubes and see what's up there. First of all, let's go ahead and flip it around and see what we see. Okay, so relatively clean board on these guys. Can see, now that's interesting. Yeah, these guys have a choke, but then also appear to have the 10 watt resistor there. Actually, I haven't looked at the schematic for one of these reissues in quite a while. But let's just do a couple quick checks. We'll first make sure that we are discharged, just because who knows what they got going on in these things with these reissues. Okay. Everything looks good. Now this guy also has what I was told was a failed power switch, where it's like the LED for the power light doesn't come on every time. Looks like the soldering is good and everything. So I don't know if that's something failed internally on the switch, and maybe I'll have to check that out closer. But the soldering at least looks good and intact. So that most likely is just a failure with the power switch here. Something going on internal. There's an internal light that gets powered off the AC on these. It also might have taken a hit at some point. Okay, so while we're here though, let's go ahead and check our screen resistors. Okay. Oh, and look at that. Oh no, that guy's good. Never mind. Well, this guy does appear to be open. Let's see. Let's look at our other one over here. 1 ohm. So these must be used for the bias. These are coming off the cathode and acting as a connection to ground. So you can more easily bias the amp. Are there bias points on the back? There's not much point in doing that without bias points on the back. But look, I believe this one's failed open. So that's something right there. And we got a little spider web. That guy's good though. That guy's good. That guy's good. Okay, so let's see. Do we otherwise have a connection to ground? No. Okay, so there's a problem right there. So what I'm doing here is checking for continuity to the chassis between the pins on the socket. So on this side, we have continuity to ground on these 2 pins of the tube, of the power tube, which I believe these should be going to the cathode. That connection to ground is going through this 1 ohm resistor here, which is acting as, and again, I'm just switching between the continuity mode and the resistance mode. So 1.3 ohms. This is just making it so you can measure a voltage across that resistor as a way to then check the bias. So arguably makes it a little bit easier to check the bias. You don't need a special biasing tool. You don't need a tube socket with a 1 ohm resistor inside of it placed in between the tube and the amplifier, which basically is taking the current going through the power tube, running it through that 1 ohm resistor, so you get an equivalent voltage that's in a power of 10, so it's easy to measure. Now, on this side, we have that same connection for these 2 tubes. And again, on this side, we're getting that connection to ground, right? That 1 ohm resistor is good. This 1 ohm resistor is measuring open. When I switch to continuity mode, I get no connection to ground for any of these 2 tubes. Now that's a cheap and quick fix. 1 ohm resistor. I don't think I have these in stock, but this is maybe a $1 part, and a couple minutes repair. This would fit into my minimum. So that's not too bad. If that's all that's wrong with this amp, that's a pretty quick, cheap fix. I would just be charging my minimum and the buck, or even would absorb the cost of this. But while we're here, let's go ahead and check out what else might be going on. I'm just going to do some more resistance checks. Make sure our balance resistors. Now these are in parallel with caps, so we're not necessarily going to get a good reading. but we're just looking to make sure we're not getting something wildly outside of the norm. Okay. And let's go ahead and check out some of these other resistors that are likely to eat up some power. Okay. It's all looking good. I was also told the low input just flat out doesn't work, which it appears to be wired, so this could be a failed jack. But I might have to take a closer look at that. That's this guy here. Now it looks like it has so there's continuity between there. This volume pod is very loose on there. I'm guessing this took a hit at some point. Let's see. Preamp goes to there. Where's this wire going? I believe that goes right there. Yep. Which goes up to that cap. Yeah, so I think at worst this is maybe a failed jack here. That's something that could be sussed out pretty easy. This definitely needs to be tightened down. I probably would touch up these solder joints just because it does appear that this guy took a hit at some point. Let's go ahead and plug a cable into this. So I'm going to take a cable, plug into the low input, and just see if we get continuity. Okay, we do. And what about to ground? Oh, bumped my head. Okay, now this could be part of the problem. So how does this get to ground? Okay, it appears this jack does not have any kind of continuity to ground. Which is interesting. This goes to the bottom jack there, which should be connecting to our... Okay, when nothing's connected, that should connect. These are switching jacks here. Okay, so that's all working as it should. Now let's see, just for sanity, we'll go to the input that does work, and we do have continuity. So I'm testing between the sleeve here and ground, but we do not have that on this one. Now it should have a connection to there, which it does, and then to the one below it, which it does. But then what is that connected to? Doesn't appear to be connected to anything. And these are jacks that are isolated from the chassis, so it should be getting its ground from somewhere other than the front panel. Okay, so I'll have to double check where that's getting its connection from normally, but this should be an easy fix. I'm guessing there's just a single wire that's been disconnected or that lost its connection. In fact, I'm going to look into that right now. Okay, so let's take a closer look here at the input jacks and what's going on. You can see this node here in focus, and the one below it should have a connection to ground and do not. Now, typically that's either a wire connected between that same terminal on the top and bottom. So you can see this guy. Sorry, I'm trying to get it as close as I can between here and here. That's the ground point for the two jacks. There should be a wire connecting between those two, or something else tying that point to ground. The rest of the jack works as intended. And in fact, this point does have continuity to ground. So it's grounding the tip, your signal coming in, when nothing is plugged into this. But the shield, this side, or the sleeve, which is, you know, this part of your cable, when you plug it in, it's connected to nothing. So that's why the low input is not working, but the high is on this amp. Should be a pretty quick fix. Okay, let's go ahead and test the tubes. And then we'll also power this thing up and just see what kind of voltages we're getting to see if there's any other issues. I think that might be it on this guy. Okay, so you may have heard me pause a little bit when I was first looking at this amp when we opened it up. And the reason for that was usually the labels on tubes all align with each other if they are in the correct orientation. Now, this tube and the one next to it that's out of focus here, that's already been removed, had a blown resistor for the 1 ohm resistor going to the ground, which means something shorted out at some point. When I went to pull this guy out, look what came off. So it sure looks like these two tubes, let's see if I can get this on video. Yep. So the keyway was forced to go in between pins. Let's see. I can't read which ones those are, but between those two pins instead of there. Or maybe not. Looks like the keyway is right there. So maybe it's the other guys that are incorrect. But this is not a good look. There's a chance this tube has lost vacuum. I will probably still throw it on the tester, but we'll be very careful when I do so. But let's see, as I pull this guy out, we're going to have something similar, because it is really in there. Try to be gentle. Okay, this one survived. Now let's see if these guys are in the correct orientation. Oh, that one looks okay. So it's possible that we just had this one tube fail. And it's just the ruby tubes is not as consistent. Okay, that looks like it was in the correct position. Okay, I'm going to test all these on the tester here, and I'll report back what we find. Okay, so we've ended up with two problematic tubes. This guy had the keyway broken off and basically is not going to be reliable even if it has maintained vacuum. I'm going to recommend replacing this. And coincidentally, the opposing side had a vacuum leak. It was testing off the charts on the gas on my tube tester, which means there's a gas leak. The other tests for like the life and everything were just like going off the charts. So when I got to the gas setting, it bounced back pretty hefty. So, I mean, this is going to a person that potentially, or staying with a person, depending on whether it gets sold, that has a lot of other amps. So these two tubes could be thrown into a 50 watt amp very easily. And even if I could find another two that have a very similar transconductance as these two, we could just get a set to replace these two. However, that's pretty unlikely. I'm going to recommend a full set of new power tubes and then just have them use these two as backups for another amp since they tested good. Okay, we're going to power this thing up, see what kind of voltages we get, see if there's any other issues. All right, so we've got this guy hooked up to a dummy load at 8 ohms, and then just going straight into the wall. We've got no power tubes installed. Yeah, and again, kind of just going to check to see what kind of voltages we get. Everything will be a little bit higher than expected since there are no power tubes. And also going to see what the state of this power switch is, since I was told that that was having issues. It basically turns on, but the LED inside is maybe a little problematic. So let's see what happens when we power up here. Well, it seems like it's actually maybe the switch itself is having issues. Oh yeah, I have to hold this in place to get it to power up. Let's see if that's actually cutting power. You can actually hear the bulb inside the switch cutting in and out. So yeah, don't really like that. But I think it's okay at least. All right, let's come out of standby. We're getting nothing. I wonder if we just blew a fuse when I was playing with that power switch. Let's go back to AC. Well, that must be for our heaters. There's 120. There's 120. Oh, now we're getting something. Is this really? Okay, well, there's our voltage. And again, these values are going to be higher than they would be loaded down. Make sure we're getting bias. And we are. Make sure we're getting screen and plate voltages. And we are. 74. Okay. That all looks good. We'll check our preamp tubes here. This guy's going to be a little tricky. Okay. All the plates on the preamp are getting voltage that they should. I would say without doing the repair here, that's about as far as we can go on this. But things are looking promising. So just to recap overall, we need a ground connection between the ground of the low jack and the high jack. Or however, the slow jack needs to be grounded, but it currently is not when a plug is plugged in. We need this 1 ohm metal oxide resistor, probably a 2 or 3 watt. I bet it's a 2 watt, but we would replace with a 3 watt. Let's see if we can get that frame. This guy needs to be replaced so that these 2 tubes can conduct. We need a new power switch. Again, move that over even further. This guy needs to be replaced because it's wonky at best. We need a new set of power tubes, or at the very least, this tube and this tube to be replaced. The preamp tubes tested at the low end of the good scale on my tube tester. That really doesn't tell us a lot necessarily. I do trust it. So if it were me, I would replace all of the tubes, the preamp and the power tubes. 3 12AX7s. There were EL34Bs in here. That's kind of to taste. Those just sound a little bit different than the EL34s. But a new quad is what I would recommend. And then just save the center 2 tubes that did test good as a backup set for a 50 watt amp. Unable to test things like the effects loop without fixing the power tubes, but the screen resistors all test good. So I'm guessing everything else will be good in there. Yeah, seems like things are probably otherwise just fine in this amp. At some point it will need new filter caps. And then the bias caps are right up here on these amps. That's probably about a $200 job down the road. But everything looks good. These look nice and steady on their voltage. So I have no reason to suspect any of these tubes are failing at this point. The balance resistors all test out just fine. Yeah, overall, just a kind of an inside look into if I were about to purchase an amp, or if you bring an amp into me to get an estimate, these are the type of things that I walk through. In this case, it's a person looking into buying this amp, and they, just like you would take a car to the shop to get an estimate, see where things stand. They plugged it in, and it didn't sound right to their ears, and this is why. It does have a couple issues here. So that's going to be about it for this one, and thanks as always for watching. We'll have a few more repairs coming up soon. Lots to do in the shop. Going to be doing some pedal builds here soon too, so might give you guys a look into how I approach those things. Haven't built any pedals in quite a while, so kind of getting back into that. All right, as always, thanks for watching. Hope you have a good evening, and we'll see you on the next one.